A great pleasure to welcome to What's Next to Rafe Pilling, who is the security researcher at Secureworks Counter Threat Unit. A topic I'm very passionate about, and we're living in some very interesting times. Rafe, firstly, a good morning to you, and thank you for joining us. Where are you joining us from?
Good morning. It's great to be here. I'm coming in from Edinburgh, Scotland.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we had some wonderful visuals from Edinburgh with the Queen's funeral the last few days. It's been quite an extraordinary event, just witnessing this historical event. And I guess that on the backdrop of that, we're witnessing something else historically, and this is the cybersecurity threats that we're seeing at unprecedented levels. But before we go anywhere, Rafe, do introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about Secureworks and what you do at Secureworks.
Absolutely. So I'm a principal researcher with the Secureworks Counter Threat Unit in the threat research team. I've been with the company about 16 years now. I started out as a SOC analyst, moved up through our sort of professional services group. I've done penetration testing, sort of red teaming type activity, digital forensics, incident response. For a couple of years, I was a PCI DSS QSA, so doing more on the sort of auditing side, working with companies trying to sort of protect financial information, particularly payment card data, and comply with the PCI DSS standard. And then about maybe 10 years ago now, moved into the Counter Threat Unit, and the Counter Threat Unit's focus is producing countermeasures and threat intelligence to support our customers and our platforms. We have we are a cloud services provider. Essentially, we provide the Taegis XDR platform. So the group that I'm in provides a function that develops countermeasures for our endpoint technologies, our network technologies, and the XDR platform, as well as threat intelligence reporting on a wide range of threats, everything from sort of ransomware, business email compromise, a wide range of cybercrime activities, and sort of nation-state related activity, APT type groups, that kind of thing.
Wow, that is some portfolio. I'm excited to be talking to you because it's something I'm very passionate about. And when you look at where we are right now, and I was looking at some research that was conducted, and you look at the reports that, the big insurance companies globally that insure against various threats in an organization, they're saying that cyber threats are the number one biggest global threat to business today. And when you look at the last 2 years, I mean, we've just seen this exponential increase. And I look at not only here in South Africa, but just globally, you look at the threats. I mean, I even see that Uber was hacked just recently, and some information was stolen there. Thankfully, it wasn't personal customer information, but it's a war out there. And I wonder if you could describe the size and the shape of the cyber threat landscape and what are companies up against. It's horrific what's going on out there.
I absolutely agree. So it certainly feels like since the sort of 2012 timeframe when I kind of moved into the threat intelligence side of the business, that we have seen a significant uptick in the number of sort of cyber intrusions, the impact to customers or the impact to businesses as a result of those, and yeah, absolutely the scale of the issue, both on the criminal side and the nation state side. You've got more countries getting involved in more offensive cyber activity or cyber activity for sort of espionage purposes as well, I think, than we had 10 years ago. And yeah, definitely ransomware is obviously one of the highest impact crimes that we have seen, and there has been an explosion since, I would say, 2015, 2016, it was very much a sort of threat actors would take a spray and pray type approach. So malware might be delivered via email. A company might end up with one or two systems encrypted, which was definitely an inconvenience, and it was a bit of a shock at the time. It was a much more visible cybercrime than some of the other kind of malware or fraud related things that were happening. But that quickly became an issue where instead of trying to hit a large number of companies for a small number of systems, the model changed where criminals would dive deep into an organization and encrypt as many systems as possible and kind of maximize the leverage that they had there. And that model has then sort of perpetuated. That success in the cybercrime space has bred more success, more people trying to come into that space and take advantage there. and you've got criminals, operating from around the globe. There's a lot of Russian-speaking actors, but we see sort of criminal groups based in various African countries, across the Middle East. I myself sort of specialize in Middle Eastern threats, and recently covered an Iranian ransomware group. So there's lots of different groups getting in on this action, and our customers often ask us, who is being targeted, and the reality is, if you are on the internet and you make money, then you're in the frame for being targeted by these sort of groups.
It's quite extraordinary what's going on out there. Of course, when you talk about ransomware, the numbers that are being spoken about out there is just the numbers that we are hearing of, where companies are actually talking about it. And I don't know what your sense on this is, but most of the ransomware money that's paid is we don't hear about it, right? Companies keep that hush-hush.
There's certainly, we track, for example, groups that have publicly accessible leak sites. So part of their operation, part of the way they get leverage, is to take data from these organizations in addition to encrypting their systems. That data is placed on these leak sites. Those breaches are publicized. Now, sometimes if a victim pays early, for example, they may not have their data placed on that site. They may not be publicized. And some groups have claimed, for example, that they're doing, for every one victim they publish on the leak site, there may be one or two that they're not publishing. So that is, what we're seeing via those leak sites is only a fraction. Maybe it's half, maybe it's a third, maybe it's even less of the total victim count. And yeah, the ransoms are anything from tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds or even millions of dollars in some cases.
Wow, it's extraordinary. Now, Rafe, a lot of people, and I've attended a couple of conferences recently, and both political, industrial leaders, you'll hear, corporate CEOs and CTOs, they will say that one of the biggest problems is the lack of cybersecurity skills, and that's part of the problem, that there aren't enough professionals to be able to be employed by organizations and really be part of the cybersecurity war. Is that a fair assessment? I mean, what's your take on it? And you just look at the vacant jobs in the cybersecurity sector, and you can see that there is clearly a big problem with skills.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, some people push back on this argument, but I think it is fair to say that more organizations are more aware that they need cybersecurity skills within the business. There's also a sort of a diverse range of systems that they have to secure within their business, and so finding people with the skills in those technologies can be difficult. Can also be expensive, having specialists in all these different sort of technology areas. And it's also, I think, they're looking for experienced people as well. There's lots of people, lots of keen individuals sort of spending a lot of time studying, getting into the cybersecurity sector, which is great. But at the same time, that kind of experience and that depth of experience can be in short supply and hard to find. I think that's one of the things at Secureworks that we can help organizations with, is that we have people with those experiences and a lot of different security technologies and a lot of different areas of sort of security services and processes that people need. And so people, rather than having to hire some of those expensive resources themselves, they can hire a smaller security team that can respond to incidents, and we can handle a lot of the security monitoring, the malware reverse engineering, threat intelligence, sort of red teaming or incident response type services, and they can buy small slices of people essentially through services that we provide and through the platform. So that's how we try and sort of help alleviate that issue. But it definitely is an issue. It's not just an issue on our side, fortunately. So one of the things that we see with some of the criminal groups is that they are they're also kind of limited by the number of people they can hire to conduct some of these operations. So when we look at the growth of some of these ransomware attacks, the growth tends to be somewhat linear, because they need people on their side to conduct the intrusions, to distribute the ransomware, to handle the ransomware negotiations and that kind of thing. And so they also are trying to hire the best people they can in that kind of cybercrime market. And there's a lot of issues with that. There's trust issues. There's issues contacting the right people. So fortunately, they can't scale exponentially, and that is some benefit to the defender side, is that they have similar issues on the sort of criminal end of things. But definitely the skill shortage is an issue.
Now, we often hear about AI playing a really big role as a solution to cybersecurity. And of course, AI together with machine learning, there's a lot of hype around this saying that, this will help solve a lot of your security problems. Do you believe in that? I mean, does AI and machine learning have a big role to play in this?
I think it certainly has a role to play in it. So this is one of the ways that we can help compensate for our inability to sort of scale up experienced security professionals, for example. There will always be more security events, more security alerts, more logs than we have people to review those. And so, one of the things we do within Secureworks, within the Tejas platform, is leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to take sort of judgments and decisions that human analysts have made or that we've learned through threat intelligence research and amplify that through, to be able to scale that up to a much larger scale and apply that across all the sort of telemetry streams that we have. So it's that combination of kind of human intelligence and machine learning that can lead to a really powerful outcome. And one of the issues is that it's really easy to develop, a machine learning based analytic or model that will throw up anomalies. But
Yes.
people, analysts don't have time to constantly investigate these long streams of anomalies within organizations, and lots of enterprise organizations are just full of anomalous activity. It's being able to differentiate the malicious activity from the non-malicious activity, and that's where our kind of depth of experience, our visibility into the threat landscape allows us to know how to make those differentiations and make sure that our models are tuned to identify those malicious acts rather than just weird things happening in networks.
Great points there. When you look at where companies are today, how can companies actually fight this battle that we're talking about? How do they level up their security capabilities? And of course, bearing in mind that it's now becoming a costly exercise. And sometimes you speak to CIOs and CTOs and all the C-suite people and saying, look, we haven't budgeted additional budget for cybersecurity because it just seems to be on an increase. So how do organizations fight this with limited budgets? And I know that they've got to take this seriously and they've got to go throw money at the problem. But, is that such a thing that you can do this with a limited budget? And I guess it's also an open-ended question, but how do organizations fight this with the limited budgets that they have? What advice do you give to companies who want to level up their cybersecurity capabilities?
So one of the things we certainly talk to companies about is it's not about being perfect. It's about being a hard target, either a hard target to compromise or once a threat actor is inside the environment, being a hostile environment. Ultimately, one of the great things about cybercrime is that it's revenue driven. They want to minimize their effort and maximize their return on that effort investment within a business. So if you can make it sufficiently difficult to compromise your organization or sufficiently difficult to complete the ransomware objective or whatever the objective is once they're inside the organization, then they'll go elsewhere. So that's one of the sort of strategies we can think about. Now, there's always, and it depends which industry you're in, there are various sort of regulatory and compliance requirements that some organizations have to work to. It's generally true that in our data, we tend to see heavily regulated industries less frequently compromised by ransomware groups, for example, than sort of less well-regulated industries where there's less of a focus on cybersecurity. And again, that comes back to that making a hostile environment. It's not necessarily about being perfect because often compliance objectives don't necessarily align with security objectives, and people focus on those compliance objectives and maybe miss the point on security. But if you're looking at tactical fixes that you can implement within an organization that will have a meaningful impact without having to go through maybe the full cybersecurity transformation life cycle that you might need to go through, we would say focus on things like, so first of all, threat intelligence. You can either purchase this, but there's lots of good threat intelligence out there that talks about issues in the general sense, so understand the ransomware model, understand how threat actors are targeting businesses. The way they are targeting businesses is first of all through remote access solutions, so making sure that you have multi-factor authentication on any internet accessible remote access solutions. this helps take some of the impact out of phishing attacks or other sort of credential attacks where threat actors can get hold of passwords for your employees. But if they do, they still need to try and bypass that multi-factor authentication solution. So you're straight away making it harder to get in to an organization. Now, we've seen a number of cases over the past 12 months where that has been done. So there's still things to think about. We've seen these sort of multi-factor alert fatigue type attacks where the request for that multi-factor authentication is repeatedly sent to an employee, maybe at nighttime, and eventually an employee will just approve that access and the threat actor can get in. So there are ways around this. So there are solutions that have sort of a challenge handshake approach so that you can't just click a button on an app or respond to an SMS. You need to have seen a number, for example, and put that in and respond. But multi-factor authentication on internet-facing services is huge. And the last one we talk about is sort of visibility. So getting endpoint visibility within your endpoint estates, all of your user workstations, all of your servers, make sure there's some kind of EDR agent on there so you can see what's going on, having visibility at the network layer and also your cloud services, and bringing those all together in some sort of platform that gives you that single unified view. So for us, it would be the Taegis sort of XDR platform. We bring client telemetry together there, give them that unified view. And that way you have visibility across your network. You're sort of securing your perimeter. Sorry, the last thing I want to mention on the perimeter is internet-facing vulnerabilities. So that's the other big way we've seen these groups getting into companies is exploiting proxy shell or exploiting log4j on certain types of systems or some of the vulnerabilities that came before that. So knowing your external infrastructure, knowing your perimeter, knowing your vulnerabilities and patching those quickly is the other big one. So threat intelligence, multi-factor authentication, vulnerability management on the perimeter, and that internal visibility and response capability are sort of four of the major things that we would talk about in terms of leveling up quickly while you go through the wider transformation process.
That's some great advice there, Rafe. And Secureworks, why Secureworks? There's so much competition out there. What sets Secureworks apart from everyone else?
I think there's a number of things. I think it's the experience that we've had doing this. So that kind of goes back, the company's been around, I think, over 20 years now. We've been a managed service provider helping companies around the globe for a long period of time. And now with the Taegis platform, which is the result of nearly 2 decades of experience in bringing together telemetry from different event sources, making sense out of that, turning that sort of telemetry and that data into alerts that are sort of translated into meaningful incidents for our customers to go and investigate. I think that's one of the main things we do is funnel all that noise down, extract out that signal, and let them act upon it, because usually it's the in-house response team that is best placed to help the business, but they need to know where to look, they need to know what to look at, and then we're there to support them with a range of other services as well, whether it's red teaming, whether it's instant response services, and all of that's available through the sort of the Taegis platform.
Fantastic. Well, there's a lot of experience there, and really, you guys really understand exactly what's going on out there, and of course, just with the knowledge that you have, understanding the landscape, you're able to act and take a lot of that noise away, because you're so right in what you're saying. There's just so much noise. Leave it to the professionals like Secureworks who know what they're doing to look after those kind of things. And my final question to you, Rafe, what's the scariest thing that you've seen so far this year? You mentioned the Iranian breach that you discovered recently, but you must see some really interesting things from a cybersecurity point of view. What's been the scariest thing you've seen so far this year?
It's a good question. So I think, some of the attacks that spill over into the physical space, I think are sort of interesting and concerning. So we have, obviously we had the Viasat attack involved in the sort of Russia-Ukraine conflict, being able to take out a wide swathe of satellite modems was quite an interesting incident. And I think some of and again, it doesn't necessarily get perhaps the press attention it needs, but some of the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, particularly in Iran, we've got these cyber attacks. There was the steel mill attacks recently. There are other sort of attacks where I think against sort of water purification plants in Israel. So some of these attacks where the infrastructure that's been targeted is sort of civilian, there's potentially physical impact. I think these are interesting, and nations are kind of exploring where the red lines and boundaries are there. And, you know, that could have potentially very serious consequences.
Fascinating discussion. Rafe Pilling, who is the security researcher at Secureworks Counter Threat Unit. We thank you so much for joining us on What's Next and sharing those insights, Rafe.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great to talk to you.